news out of Rams camp, which is that they got an extension done with Kyren Williams. I thought this was an interesting conversation for us because roster building is sort of, our bread and butter, and paying the running backs, not paying the running backs, paying Kyren specifically of all running backs becomes kind of an interesting conversation. So the fact that they were able to get this done, and I don't know that it was a for sure obvious thing that they were going to sign him to an extension personally, but they did. So it's a 3-year, $33 million deal, 23 guaranteed, 7th highest average per year at 11 million. So where that ranks in terms of the other running backs, you've got Saquon at the top, you've got CMC, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Kamara, Josh Jacobs. So he's being paid very well relative to his position. But I do think it's also worth noting that he's not even close to the same ballpark as Saquon, who's making almost twice as much at 20.6 per year. So you've got kind of a big gap between 1 and, in this case, 7. Taking Kyren's stats in mind from the last few years and understanding that what you want to do with an extension is pay for the production you think you're going to get moving forward and not reward production that you've already had. But you also, need to take care of certain people. Like, it's an environmental situation where you don't want to totally undercut people who are important to your team in terms of locker room stuff. I think that this is an interesting conversation. What do you think of the deal?
Yeah, I mean, let's lay out what they believe they're paying for. And that is someone who has been one of the best success rate running backs in the National Football League for the past couple of years. And he's been consistent in that. It was that way last year. It was that way the year prior. And especially in a Sean McVay system where you're running a lot of duo, you're running out a lot of man. The goal is to not take massive losses and keep the chains moving so that your players like Puka Nacua or your players like Matthew Stafford can make big plays. That's a perfect setup. And he also is a great innings eater as well. He can take a lot of carries. He's the true running back one. And so that is what they are paying for. The questions, Lindsay, are a lot more contract-based because you dive into these contracts, and I think this may be the first reverse, like deflation of an APY for a contract, because the way I'm looking at this contract is 2 years, 22 million guaranteed or 23 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
That's fourth. There's only 3 more players that are making more guaranteed, all on 2-year contracts, all offensive player of the years. Derrick Henry, CMC, Saquon. I don't know if I view Kyren in that realm. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the 2-year cash, 3-year cash, signing bonus, etc., all comes out as it's leaked out, because the APY that you just laid out is a lot different than the guarantees. And when we're talking about running backs, we did the sticky stat series. It's immensely variable what may happen on a year-to-year basis. And moreover, we have seen that with the Rams in the year they made the Super Bowl with Todd Gurley. So that is why this is so fascinating, Lindsay.
Well, it's, I agree. So many of those points. You pointed out the success rate. One of the problems with pointing to the success rate, even though it is a stat that's attached to him, is that it's so clearly a team and environmental
100%.
stat, right? Like, so O-line blocking, Stafford being in the backfield, the wide receivers being as good as they are, and just taking defensive, affecting the box. Like, there's so much here that really it's hard to dial down. Like, is this specific running back the one who is making this happen, or is the offense making this happen and we're plugging this guy in? And then they just drafted a guy, right? So, I mean, there's so many layers to this for me. I'm like, one, are we like hitting pause on the Jarquez Hunter excitement and saying like maybe he won't cut into his snaps this year and maybe this is going to be Kyren for at least the next couple of years because they must think so because they're paying him as if it's going to be him for a couple of years. But then also it was day 3. So I realized that there's that. But like they were real excited to get Jarquez Hunter. Is that depth then? Is that, I'm just trying to figure out all of this because if you did draft Jarquez Hunter with the notion that he could step in, maybe it gave you some leverage in terms of negotiations. Like, we got another guy. Like, we don't have to pay you. But do they think that they have to have Kyren and that there is drop off if Kyren leaves the field? There's this almost brings up more questions than it does answers for me.
100%. And particularly since the expectation, just statistically, and we talked a lot about Terry McLaurin last week and how the stats didn't necessarily add up to what it was reported that he wants. Now it's reported that he doesn't necessarily want that, but he wants other things. There's all kinds of elements here. Here it's on paper. It's signed, sealed, delivered. The terms, at least as we know, the $33 million, 3 years, $22 million guaranteed, $23 million guaranteed. And the real knock of why he wouldn't be a top 5 or a top 10 running back is the EPA per play last year. And that is the true descriptive stat when it comes to the running game. That's the one that everyone grades their running game on. And he just was not immensely efficient last year. Now, what does that mean? It means he fumbled a lot. Was he better the year prior when he almost made an all-pro team? Yes. But will that fumbling get better? Do defenders, as a former defender, smell blood in the water? You start to get more punches. You start to get more chances taken when a guy knows that you will fumble? Yes. And so when you are hurting your team via those massive EPA drop-offs due to fumbles, that does bring up about a question of, can you get back to that EPA space? And that has nothing to do with the aging curve of running backs, him going into his 4th year, him being heavily utilized at Notre Dame, him being heavily utilized as a Los Angeles Ram. And so there's just so many questions about this that you almost kind of wanted to see it play out a little bit more if you're coming from a purely analytical perspective.
He was 30th last year amongst running backs in yards after contact per attempt. He was tied for 25th in rushing yards over expected per attempt at 0. He was 12th in terms of runs of 10 yards or more. This one's an interesting one for me because he is not really used in the passing game, right? Like people who look at this from a fantasy context understand Kyren has been very good in fantasy. That's because his rush share is off the charts, right? He just eats up every single carry for them. One guy only. It's Kyren. He has a 70% rush share from last year. He had 316 of their 450 rush attempts. So that's significantly higher than everybody else. And that's why he gets to the point where he does in terms of yards, right? So he's 7th in rushing yards last year, 3rd in attempts. Like, he just gets the ball a ton. They don't throw the ball to him. He's 40th in receiving yards, 31st in running back targets. So like, you've got some stats here where it feels very propped up by volume as opposed to talent. And yet you also have to have enough talent to take advantage of the opportunities so that you're not just a total disaster and that they want to replace you. This is a front office that I've said over and over again, I have so much faith in. So they know him better than anyone else. And them signing him to this deal means that they think, I would imagine, that he can continue to produce at least for a couple more years at the rate that we've seen him produce for the last few years. And they think that that will be enough. But I just think it's fascinating. There is worthy of discussion here too, is that we're talking about paying him this high dollar amount for running backs. It's still like nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's worth talking about. So you're going to make him the 7th highest paid running back. Not nothing for all of us. Like, I would love $1 million per year. But in terms of NFL contracts, it's not that much money. So I wonder if, that's kind of where we're looking at it. Like, if you go to 11 per year and you look at wide receivers, you're looking at, let's see, he went just over Josh Palmer and De'Ami Brown. Like, we're in a Jacoby Myers tier. Darius Slayton is making more money than him. I mean, so if you think about it that way and you go, okay, we're going to lean on him for a couple more years. We think that he's got, there's enough tread left. Then really, like, what are we talking about here?
I think you're correct in that, in the pure monetary sense. But the reason why it is that way is because you can replace him.
Yeah.
Like,
and have someone who you might be able to replace him with. So yes.
Exactly. So, I mean, like, that's the real question is, like, if you wouldn't have paid him this year and he drops down to 50% of carries or drops down to 45% of carries, then you don't have to worry about anything for the next 2 years. You don't have to worry about paying the 4th highest non-rookie guarantee, which is like, that's locked and loaded cash coming out of the Kroenke's pocketbook there. And so it really brings about, should a running back ever get an extension. And I mean, like, really the only super successful extensions. Now, obviously, you have to give it to Christian McCaffrey because he wins the Offensive Player of the Year and is one of the best running back seasons ever.
And
They ended
when
up
he hits, needle is moved.
exactly,
Needle is
exactly
100% moved. That's what we're talking about here, right? Is this guy good enough that he individually
100%.
by himself moves the needle?
100%. And so when you go back and look at it in recent years, really the only extension that has, quote, worked out, and again, like, we're super caveating, super hindsight, has been Alvin Kamara, who has had 1,000-yard from scrimmage seasons and been the focal point of the offense for at least 12 to 15 games a year, basically since he signed that extension. Derrick Henry was eventually let go. I mean,
I was just going to say, Derek, actually, I was just about to say with Kamara, my follow-up was going to be, do you think it's because of the receiving value?
100%.
But then Derek is exactly the opposite, because Derek's not a guy who, like, Derek is a Kyren style guy. Totally different, I understand. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, he's a guy who's going to get a ton of carries and just eat up the rush share, and he has just failed to drop off in ways that feel alienish.
I think the rule is, don't give a running back an extension unless they are a major part of your passing game. Christian McCaffrey, probably going to be Jahmyr Gibbs here shortly, Alvin Kamara, or you have a 6'5", 240-pound running back. I mean, like, I think that's going to be the rule, because, like, in all, clarity, Saquon missed a lot of games for the Giants. Like, they did not get their money's worth for him, despite him, having some really great years. They did not win they made the playoffs, obviously, but, like, that draft pick in terms of surplus value probably wasn't the best draft pick in hindsight. And it's, like, difficult to say all these things because running backs are really fun and descriptively they impact the game a lot. You just cannot trust long-term. And the Rams have been burned by this before. That is the true kind of item here, is that they have been burned by this before, and they're making this decision. Clearly, they think that because of the way the offense is set up, because where their team is with a very youthful defense and some stars on offense, that they can make this move and it's not going to hurt them.
That's a good point. That's a good point, because they do have some of the most important guys on defense that are already on rookie deals, and they're set there for a few years. So maybe they have the luxury of overpaying, if we want to call it that, for a running back. And by the way, I understand, like, this is a roster building conversation. This is not, people who are not having conversations like this frequently are going to be like, what are you talking about? It's $11 million and he's a name we know. And he, and these poor running backs and how they're just getting screwed financially. That's a separate conversation.
Us analysts, man. Lindsay, we did the sticky stats series, and I know people across the league listen to it. So I don't want any blame for that, even though we did publicize all of the statistics.
Do you think that the timing of this has anything to do with the recent news about Stafford's back? And Stafford hasn't been out on the field for training camp, and the back is enough of an issue still for a 37-year-old quarterback that we're talking about maintenance, which is just, like, not what you want in the preseason, even though everything's like, oh yeah, if there was a game today. I saw Schefter saying, my understanding is if there was a game today, Stafford would be on the field. I'm like, I mean, I get that makes us feel better. That's all kind of not the point too, though. Like, we're talking about a guy who has had some issues physically in the last few years, and now we're starting the season with things that we have to be concerned about, and we're maintaining him already, right? Like, this is not exactly how we want to start. So do you think that there's anything about, like, okay, fine, the running game is going to be maybe more important even than, and let's just get this done, or even redirect conversation potentially?
I think there may be identification of a window, especially given that they have a super-powered head coach in Sean McVay, and they have some really talented players on the team. And maybe you just want to lock it in for these 2 years. That being said, Jimmy Garoppolo is their backup. We've seen him do well with Kyle Shanahan. We've seen him really not do well with Josh McDaniels, and we'll talk a little bit about what Sean Syed has seen from Josh McDaniels and how it affects Drake May in a little bit. But if it's easy to say from not inside of the building and not having to win games and not having to talk to an owner every single day, but this would seem like a move that if your franchise aging quarterback goes out, that you would not want to make. So I do think maybe there is an element of urgency and window. I just wonder how much it's tied to Stafford himself and more on Puka Nacua, who is on a rookie contract, Jared Verse, who's on a rookie contract, Braden Fisk, who's on a rookie contract. And those are the three positions where you have to pay up certified because we can quantify those pretty well. So I think that's kind of more of the thought process is creating a 2-year window there where you can work in and out with those guys and then decide what to do after that.
Jimmy Garoppolo, who you brought up there, we're going to be talking about Madden ratings a little bit later on. In looking for people who are underrated, found his name very far down the list. Very far down the list. And I know that, we talked to Jordan Rodriguez at Combine when they were having conversations with Matthew Stafford, and she told us straight face, absolutely, not trying to put one over on us, that the Rams actually very much like Jimmy Garoppolo and that they were okay going to him if it didn't work out with Stafford. Now, obviously, they ended up signing this deal with Stafford. And so, but we have been told that they very much like Jimmy Garoppolo and are okay if they have to turn to him. He has a 67 Madden rating. He is rated after Tyler Shuck, who is just nothing but, bad news coming out of Saints camp with regards to his name, which I'm not suggesting we should make more of that than it is. It's still so early. He's a rookie, whatever. But rookies usually are rated very, very low in Madden relative to our expectations for them potentially. I mean, he's after Desmond Ridder, who has a 68.
Yeah.
We're after Aiden O'Connell at 68. Spencer Rattler's a 69. We're way up there. Mac Jones is a 69. Jimmy Garoppolo? What?
Yeah, I can't wait to get in these discussions with Brett Nietzsche because there's a lot of things that go into this. I'm sure Madden does an excellent job each year. And again, these are a relatively trusted kind of consensus rating.
I'm not saying that they're wrong, by the way, either. I'm just saying that the contrast between Jimmy Garoppolo's Madden rating.
Yeah, who has been number one in EPA in his career multiple times, or at least around it. So,
and also what we're hearing people like Les Snead and Sean McVay think of his skill set. So it's Madden looks at him this way, and then they're looking at him this way. And then, I hope we don't have to find out, right, who's right, because in a perfect world, I want to see the best version of the Rams on the field, and then whatever happens, happens. One last question about the Rams before we move on. And it's related to the Stafford back situation. They've got 2 wide receivers who are getting drafted very early in fantasy drafts. Puka is an early second round, kind of on the turn guy. And then Devontae is going at the end of the 3rd round, roughly, from an ADP standpoint. I would not be surprised if their average draft positions don't start to go down just a teeny bit in the next week if we don't have some good news or see Stafford back on the field. Do you think, if you were on the clock right now in fantasy, are you more or less likely to pass over on them where they're going because of the Stafford news?
I would be overjoyed to snap Puka Nacua up if he starts dropping.
Yeah,
because the 2 kind of grail stats, and when you really start asking people around the league and you start listening to our Sticky Stats series, we're pretty good at figuring out which wide receivers are good. And the way we do that is how good are they per route run, whether that's yards or EPA. They tell a little bit different story, but Puka is really good at that and has always been really good at that. And how much target share are they getting? And he is one of the top in the league at that. And I can imagine, especially if the quarterback goes out, maybe that changes Devontae Adams, but he is earning target share. And then obviously on the flip side of that, Devontae Adams switched teams twice. He switched teams during the middle of the season last year and still was able to get good target share as well. So I'd be happy to snap them up, particularly Devontae Adams. If he starts falling in the mid rounds or the late rounds, I will take that all day.